and I will share this microphone. So, if we have questions, this is the question microphone. Hopefully, we won't just be sitting here staring at each other for another hour or so. I'll be moderating the panel, so if I think a question is inappropriate or not on task, I will tell you to go away. Maybe politely, or maybe I'll get Danny to do it in Portuguese, one of the two. So, all right, so if you have questions about anything fitness related, now's the time. Go. Go ahead. Is the question mic on?
It appears not to be. There we go. I really don't like exercise, so if I was your relative, what great advice would you give me to persuade me to be more active?
I don't like exercise either. That's my answer.
So, this thing on? All right. So my thing is to encourage you to go on a journey of looking into different activities that may interest you. Okay, it doesn't have to be going to a gym. It doesn't have to be, there's a million things you can do to be active that would technically qualify as, increasing your health, making you, increasing your shape, getting you in better shape, that don't have to be the standard thing. There's a million things out there and people get obsessive about it, and that's what's the most important thing is, because that's what's gonna lead to compliance, right? So I always tell people who said, I've never been a gym person, fine, don't go to the gym. Find something you love, and the minute you don't love that thing anymore, hurry up and find something else. That's my view on it.
You know what I'll say, interacting, especially with people in the endurance scene and the gym scene for many years, the people that say they don't like exercise is because they're exercising in a manner that's too strenuous and stressful. So they sign up with their trainer, they get all pumped up on January 1st, they do 12 sessions, and they go in there and they exhaust themselves, and we're not going to like things that exhaust us and are overly stressful. So I think possibly your exposure to exercise in your past, and anyone who claims to not like this or that, probably doing it in a manner that was too strenuous. So if you just slow down, go for a shorter workout, have some fun, like Danny said, and I'm going after Danny on this panel, so just get ready. Okay, it's not going to be all fun and games. But thanks for bringing up that question, because it's very, very common that people go for a while and then they get discouraged and they fall apart and they feel bad about themselves because they see all the other runners around the trail. I think I saw you running around the trail. I think that was a plant question. Was that you running 9 miles this morning?
That's right.
No? Okay. But people are doing it in a manner that's stressful, and over time you will crash and burn out and think that you don't like exercise, but it's the way that you're doing it. Right?
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so for you and the whole audience here, it's like I said in my talk yesterday, cardio sucks. It's hard to do. You don't like to do it. But really what it's come down to, and from what I've thought, is it's the environment, stupid. And the environment we live in today, we're naturally programmed to be lazy, because if you look at us from an evolutionary standpoint, those opportunities to be lazy weren't there very often. So we did take advantage of it, because we had to, hunt and gather and build. So we were always active just because we had to be. So we need to understand that thing is natural for us not to want to exercise because it's strenuous. But like Danny was saying, you don't need an activity. Like I tell people, if you can go and garden for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, or take a walk, anything like that gets you physically active to start with a ketogenic or a low-carb diet goes really well. And what I've found with female athletes in particular, because females are very sensitive, because again, evolutionarily, from nature's standpoint, you're basically eating and saving for 2. Okay? So anytime you're in sort of, what I do with athletes is when a female athlete's in a recovery type phase, we have them do a little bit of active recovery, because that gentle bit of physical activity triggers those hormonal and enzymatic pathways to burn fat, whereas if they're doing nothing, they actually get their hunger triggers start to activate, and they become hungry and start to want to eat, and it really does do a good job of staving off that hunger.
Can I say something? All right, so for me personally, like everybody says they don't like cardio. Nobody likes cardio. I think if you find a way to basically hack your brain and associate kind of like a risk and reward kind of feature, like when I'm doing a competition prep and I need to do cardio, I never get to listen to podcasts, I never listen to audiobooks, I never get to watch YouTube videos because I'm always doing something else. But I basically would reward myself and say, I get this reward when I'm doing cardio. So I associate the cardio with that reward, and it got to the point where I would look forward to being on the Stairmaster for 20 minutes because that'd be the only window in my day where I'd really get to enjoy, that YouTube video or that podcast, and I'd look forward to it.
Yeah, I think another thing that's really big is like having a goal and being able to complete that goal translates away from fitness and into your regular life. Like a lot of these guys talking about how, getting started might be really challenging and it can be really hard. But if you can just start with something simple, like they're talking like going for a walk or, just finding a way to get going and having that goal and checking it off, you're going to find that, getting started in a lot of other things in your life is probably going to be a lot easier. So if you can start with making it fitness, that can probably translate into a lot of other things in your life.
So I'll just echo every sentiment here and just really double echo Danny's, mostly because we talk about this on our podcast, is if it's exercise, you might not like it. If it's play, you'll do it, right? So find what you like. And it doesn't matter, like Peter said, gardening, right? It's better than just sitting on the couch watching Game of Thrones because the books are better. Because the books are better, people. But seriously, just find what you like, go do that. And if you don't like it, find something else. So play. Think of it as play. Exercise is not punishment. It should be an extension of the enjoyment that you have for a fulfilled life, is all I'm saying.
By the way, each question will be answered by every panelist. So
Twice.
Next question, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I win that one or just?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Adriana. I am a athletic weightlifter, and I also do it for performance and physique. So I'm a figure competitor. But my question to you is: has the ketogenic diet? Have you found that it has any impact on, for example, minimal training response that you need to increase performance? So in terms of like training volume and frequency and intensity, does it change when you go into ketosis? And have you found that there's a point where you see diminishing returns?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and that's going to point out that we need a lot more resistance training studies because there's not a ton out there, and a lot of the resistance training studies out there, we're lucky if they're 8 to 12 weeks long, so that's a really tough question to ask. But generally speaking, from a fitness level, obviously the more that the better trained you are, the harder it is to make physiological adaptations. So I would have to assume that probably extends into keto as well. But it also probably depends on what your goal is. So if you're somebody who, if you're doing it for like say physique, where you're trying to lower body fat percentage and trying to get in better shape that way, you're probably going to find that it's a little bit easier on a ketogenic diet compared to other diets. When it comes to like building muscle and performance, that might be totally dependent on your training status, how long you've been training for. But that you bring up a great point that we have to have a lot more studies on that because there's really not a lot of literature on that right now.
From a composition standpoint, like you say, you're on stage and whatnot as a competitor. I didn't ever change my training style. Like my weightlifting portion of my training stayed the exact same. It stays the same even when I'm in the off season versus contest prep. But it didn't change with carbs or keto. What did change is my volume of cardio needed. When you're adapted, your body is using your stored fat as fuel as well. So I would burn through any additional stored fat faster on keto. So my prep was 4.5 months long. I didn't introduce cardio until about 2 months out, and it was a very consistent, not difficult at all. I didn't have to kill myself. Prior years, I would do an hour and a half of cardio sessions, whereas I never went more than 20 minutes at a time this past year. So I think it's much easier from a cardiovascular standpoint.
Thank you.
Well, I'll add one more thing, because both myself and my wife noticed this, and we were talking to Nick Hardwick on the podcast, an NFL guy who played in the NFL for a long time. A lot of times people can't move as much, and because of inflammation or whatever, and you'd follow a ketogenic diet, and all of a sudden that inflammation goes down, but you have structural issues where your knees aren't working as well or whatever, but you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm not doing much and I look really good. And so from like just a personal experience and something that Nick shared with us is that you don't have to do as much with keto as you would, and this is just, like I said, to get the same results, just personal experience. That's what I've noticed.
Oh, great answers. Thank you.
For the record, I look in the mirror every day and say, yeah, you look good.
Hey dudes, I have a question. It might be two, but so my question is regards to like long distance training. I do a lot of biathlons and a lot of duathlons, and I'm stretching towards probably closer to like 50 miles on my bicycle and about 10 to 15 miles of running. And so what I'm trying to hone in on right now is supplements. Like what types of supplements are good to kind of like hit through the halfway mark? Should I be trying those? And so far it's been okay on keto, but I do feel like I need some type of boost at some point during the race. So yeah, that's the question.
Just to clarify, you're asking about supplements during the actual event itself?
Either
during your training runs
during
too?
the training, yeah, during the training or during the race.
I think the two best are EPO and anabolic steroids, which has been used by Tour de France cyclists for many years.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you should get about a 6% in performance improvement just by taking the red blood cell drug EPO.
Year over year, right? Year over year, 6% performance.
Which is huge. You'll be winning all your races, and then you'll be like home showering when second place comes in. So, right, Peter? Are you on the juice right now, or are you clean?
You forgot the testosterone.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if that's an actual answer.
Yeah, I'm
or...
like, I don't. I'm
Well,
just
that's
gonna
number
try.
one. So number two would maybe be eat a ketogenic diet, perhaps. I don't know. What does the panel think?
Well, I would suggest that you want to hone in on the actual nutrition and nutritional balance in your diet, not just look at keto as just high fat, low carb. Make sure you're getting the fat soluble vitamins. I put everybody on organ meat and gelatin. And the two things I see is vitamin D levels and magnesium. So you really got to be active on that. Because what you want to do is get your endogenous pathways upregulate first, and then yes, for hard training sessions and races, you should be taking in some additional calories, but also in race, you really want to figure out the hydration, and that's such a dynamic thing, but you'll need the swings in the amount of sodium needs between sedentary and exercise can be really big with keto. And then don't be afraid of using, like I said in my talk yesterday, don't be afraid of using some carbs on before race day, and then when you go into a recovery phase, ratchet them way back down.
Great.
Brad, you're an endurance guy.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so no, I have something too for you. So I think that it's really important to, whatever you're going to do, you're going to need to test it, like you said, during your training session before you get to a race. Like food and stuff before your race or during your race, it changes a lot on keto. I don't really do a lot of long distance stuff, but I used to be a cross-country runner and stuff, and before I was keto, and obviously pre-workout or pre-training nutrition was a really big deal. And I've noticed that now even on, I don't go on long runs, but 3 to 5 miles and stuff, which is, not the same as what you're talking, but it's not as big of a deal to me. So water and electrolytes, like they were talking, is really important. I've noticed that like magnesium and potassium is really big to make sure that I'm not cramping up, especially like depending on your training conditions if you're sweating a lot. But with food, I would really just make sure that you're testing stuff. Like for me, I'll notice that like some, like a lower carb protein bar, as long as it doesn't sit too heavy, does really well for me if I need something. But if you're new to keto, you definitely need to see, because you might find out that you don't really need to worry about pre-training or intra-training nutrition with that.
Yeah, the reason I'm sitting here in my gym sweats is I just did like a 3.5 hour run. Now it was slow, and I ran out. I didn't have much water, so but it was fasted, and that was it. So that's the thing. You want to train, do one long training run a week in your training that's fasted, and just try to develop that endogenous system, and then on race day and in the simulated race stuff, bring back some carbs. I tend to recommend carbs because they digest simpler than fat-based stuff, particularly if you're doing the heat.
Hey, Brian, how long's this panel? Is it? It looks like we got a lot of questioners, so
Right,
let's hit it hard. Thanks for
so-
so far excellent questions.
Right,
a lot to
we're-
talk about.
So next question, we're going to try to move it along a little bit faster. Thank you, Brad.
I don't want
was
people
just
standing up
enamored.
getting dogged by the end.
Yeah. Next question.
So I've heard a couple of times over the last 2 days that recovery is enhanced or improved on a ketogenic lifestyle. I'm not finding it, so I've been in CrossFit for about 4 or 5 months. I'm trying to build up metabolic conditioning, so I'm training 2, 3, 4, 5 times continuously in a week. And I'm not finding recovery is improving as compared to when I was training with
How long
carbohydrates.
have you been keto?
6 to 9 months.
6 or 9 months?
6 to 9 months, yeah.
Okay.
So do you have any advice around recovery? I mean, I've been taking ice baths, been looking into cryogenic chambers. Do you have any specific advice to help with recovery in keto?
Yeah, man, don't do so many workouts.
That's what I was going to say.
That's tough. I mean, it's a tough situation you're in because you're trying to do a high performance workout that many times a week. So by definition, all of them are going to be mediocre. And so I'd shoot for higher highs and lower lows, really, where you stay away from the gym or just do something that's, mild aerobic exercise in between those intense things that you're going through in the gym.
Are you doing a good warm up? Because that's key for fat adaptation. If you're
Well-
going into the gym for an hour and just hammering from the start, it won't work.
No, in CrossFit, you dynamically build up for about 45 minutes before hitting a 10, 20-minute WOD.
Yeah, you want to build in the rest. I mean, honestly, you've got to. You're still in the middle of your body's still trying to adapt. I mean, yes, you take 9 months, but it can take a longer time than that, especially if you're stressing it regularly like that. Just are you now? Let me ask you a question. I'm going to psychoanalyze you just for a quick second. Tell me about your mother. No, I'm just kidding. So are you of the mindset where if you miss a workout, you like, oh, I punish myself for that. I shouldn't do that.
No.
Okay, good. Then cut the workouts back.
And get more sleep. Gotta have sleep.
Yeah, sleep.
About 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, yeah, that's a big deal.
I think you need, this is my personal opinion, I don't need as much sleep on keto as I did when I was carbs. I think the quality of sleep is better. But 6 hours for me is my sweet spot. Anything less than that, and I could really tell that I'm not getting enough sleep. So, I mean, I would try and shoot for a minimum of 6 hours.
I'll add one more thing to that because it seems like you're approaching your workout with some vigor, and that's awesome. But if you look into the sleep seems like an issue. Sleep Smarter was a book that I read by Sean Stevenson that's awesome. And you can attack that the way you attack your training because you can develop a morning routine and an evening routine and try to get some PRs on the sleep quality.
That's right.
And then I think your workouts will get better.
Thank you. Next
Great,
question.
thanks.
Hi guys, I have
Hello.
2 quick questions. The first one though is I love seeing all these guys who are talking keto and strength and all of that, but do you guys know any women in the industry who are also doing similar stuff than you?
We do, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you who, but we do know them.
Ah, it's a shame. Yeah, I'd love to know some.
I interviewed Maria Redmond on my podcast, and she's been in keto. I don't know how long now, but she won an IFBB Pro card with keto, and I mean nothing but impressive. So I'd highly recommend checking her out.
Cool. Yeah, because when I Google search like keto and lifting, I'm not pulling up anything. I'm having a really tough time with it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, if you real quick too, Rachel Gregory, who's been on their podcast, she actually did a lot of research during her graduate school, and it was in CrossFitters with keto. And she was I think she just left, but she was doing a lot of like CrossFit training at a gym with a lot of females that were doing the ketogenic diet and strength training and stuff. So, yeah, Killing It Keto is hers. I would definitely look her
Oh,
up.
cool. Great. Thank you. And then the question I had is that I've been taught that I can't lose weight and gain muscle at the same time because to lose weight, this crowd's going to think differently.
You're wrong.
Yes.
Whoever said that's wrong. That's
Right.
just
So do you guys have, like, what advice would you have for me, like, with the ketogenic diet? Because I know it's wrong, but I
Eat
don't.
keto, lift heavy.
Yeah, there's this really cool case study that was from like April to August. I don't know if you saw it. It's Danny Vega. He was like,
This is Danny Vega.
he was in a I don't know 2,000 calorie deficit or something. Robert did my diet, and basically like I said, was in a deficit the whole time. My protein had dropped to 75 at the end. I was under 100 grams of protein for months, and my main goal was to drop my body fat, which I did. But my training stimulus, which is what I think and what I think people should understand, especially with keto, yeah, that is the most important thing in my opinion is you need to train and give your body a reason to adapt, especially if you're trying to build muscle. I was not trying to build muscle, I was trying to cut fat and somehow found a way to cut my fat from 12.7% to 6.5% and add 6 pounds of lean mass.
Wow.
And like I said, at the end, 75 grams of protein. So I think, like, if you've ever seen Doctor Strange, the most important thing is forget everything that you think you know, because it's different with keto. And so you still, like Robert said, you have to have a primary goal, build muscle or lose fat, but don't be surprised if the other one happens.
And Robert can attest to this. Based upon Danny's numbers, the bro science, he should actually be dead right now. He should be shriveled up and just desiccated in the corner somewhere.
Is that on your blog?
He's got a lot of that information on his Instagram stuff and Facebook page, Keto Counterculture. Follow him on Instagram.
Cool. Thanks so much.
You see all the pictures of him without a shirt on too. So.
Thank you.
Which that's my favorite part too. Yeah.
All right, I am changing over. Last year's race was completely carb loaded, 350 calories of glucose per hour, and my next race is in November, and it will be the first one on keto.
What is it? Running, cycling?
Last year was Ironman, this year's marathon.
Okay.
But I want to know what you guys, especially like Defty and Kearns, when you made that transition over, how do you let go of that security blanket of you have to have 350 to 400 calories of glucose all race? I talked to Carlos Donas a little bit, and he was like, you've got to change your mindset to you already have that source in your body. Did you guys experience that same thing? Because I feel like I've lost a little bit of my Charlie Brown blankie sometimes.
Brad, you were one of those guys.
Yeah, I didn't experience that at all because I don't race anymore, so I don't have to worry about that late stages of the Ironman running out of juice. But an interesting story was told to me by Ted McDonald. He's on our Primal Endurance course, and he did the Inca Trail in Peru, which is like a 20-mile hike with 8,000 feet of climbing. People do it in 4 days. Him and his buddy did it in 11 hours, and he was keto adapted. He was fasted. He was trying to make this great achievement where he didn't need to eat and see if he could do it. But he's in bloody Peru, and there's no 7-Elevens anywhere on the Inca Trail. So what he did was he carried in his fanny pack the gels and the cookies and everything that he needed in the event that he experienced low blood sugar. So he had that security blanket, I like that choice of words, where he's carrying the fuel that he needs, and he's going to try to push the limits of his metabolic fitness by seeing how long he can last without getting goofy and woozy. And if you've ever bonked, it's a pretty telltale sign that you need to find something right away. In fact, you're probably going to mug the nearest person and raid their fanny pack if you don't have something yourself. So I think, like, in training, you can go out there and do these long workouts and bring all the fuel that you might need if you fall apart. And there's no shame in banging, some Skittles and root beer at the mini mart at mile 80 of a long ride. And if anyone thinks
staying
there
alive beats winning the race, right?
That's right. I don't care if we're at KetoCon, for example. There's no shame in pulling into that mini mart saying, hey, I need 2 of those and 3 of these to get me back home. But then you'll know over time that you're able to go longer, you can do the workouts fasted, and you can build up, but don't be stupid and go out there without packing the necessary items, especially in a race, because the race is more stressful, you're going faster, you might need more sugar in a race than you ever did in training because you forgot that you swam an hour and 20 minutes before you got on your bike and all those great things that happen.
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, it's like Brad said, I think what Brad's saying is learn to trust the system in your training so you have that confidence in it. A couple of things, take the gels. Actually, what we found with athletes is once we get them adapted, as long as they're not in deep prolonged keto and downregulate their pyruvate dehydrogenase pathways, when they take in a gel or a shot of something, it actually acts like rocket fuel on a sustainable level. So they're taking in, we have athletes that are taking in anywhere from 30% less to 80% less. I had one guy run the Umstead 100 miler to second place, so he was elite level fast, 13 hours, 11 minutes, a guy my size, less than 600 calories of intake in race. He didn't even eat after the race. So that's kind of extreme, but the other thing I would offer to you is wait till you feel the switch when you warm up. When you're fat adapted or keto, after about 20 to 40 minutes, you'll feel that switch go to where, okay, I can go all day like this. Wait for that, and then after that kicks in, then you can start adding some calories in, and it usually falls around anywhere from 75 to 150 for competition. And the other thing to be aware of in terms of bonking when you're fat adapted, a lot of people's quote-unquote bonks is really low electrolytes, not enough sodium. Because when you're fat adapted, your sweat rate, particularly in the heat, can get pretty amazing, and you need to keep that intake of fluids, the water with the right amount of electrolytes, mainly salt, to maintain blood volume and sweat rate.
And quick Zone 2 question. Of those of you guys that have done Zone 2, because I know I heard the podcast from Danny and Brian, how long were you in Zone 2 training before you did not look like a person with Tourette's running down the street because you were stopping and walking every few seconds?
I actually have Tourette's, so I'm kidding.
It's not going to go away then.
It's not going away. I'm in Zone 3, and it's not. Never. I mean, I didn't care, honestly. Even today, like I'm pretty comfortable with it. I don't care. I don't know. Just keep running. It goes away when it goes away.
Danny, did you notice a significant time period?
No, for me it never got, and I've kind of stepped away from that recently because my goals changed in the last couple of months. But I don't think there's anything wrong with. I mean, you can try to go slower, but it's hard to gauge. I'm sure you have experience with people that you've kind of taught this, and maybe there's a period there where that happens, but it's probably different for everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, like with regard to, I didn't really ever train in the zones. Like I didn't really pay attention to that. Like I would just instinctively listen to what my body needs, and like honestly, I try to keep my cardio, and depending on what your goals are. Like mine, from a composition standpoint, I want to remove as many variables as possible. So for me, it was easier to, rather than regulate, my heart rate, I would just go to the Stairmaster, plug in level 15, and then just stick it there for 20 minutes, and that was my sweet spot. So I think experimenting and seeing what you respond best to is key.
Right.
And
Thank you.
just to address your first question real quick, the center of the question was about how do you get the confidence to it, and you get the confidence doing it by doing it, right? You train the way you're supposed to run or you race, right? So on race day, if you don't have a foundation of training that way, you're not going to have it on race day. So you make your mistakes during training so that you don't have to worry about it during the race day. That's my
Great tips. Thank you, guys.
All right, next question, please.
Just because I think this is an important topic, I was wondering if you could all comment on the anomaly that is Danny Vega's wingspan in relation to his height.
I have been trying to figure this out for a while. My only like real hypothesis is that he actually fell when he was young, and that shortened his legs. That's the only thing I could think. I got nothing else. He was supposed to be a basketball player, but
Show the audience.
So my wingspan is 6'3.5", and my height is 5'11", which is just awkward, and it's really good for deadlifting.
Seriously, and you get someone like me who's like exactly the opposite. Like my wingspan is like 4'11", and I'm 6'2".
I think Danny's arms have just gotten so big that they started weighing him down, so they just started getting longer that way.
Next question, please.
Hey, so I'm going to change the focus a little bit and say I don't exercise at all. I'm a multiple-time exercise dropout, and that whole idea of doing what you love just isn't working for me at all.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
I disagree with your fundamental premise because that would mean you don't do anything right now that you love. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No. So nothing in your life is something that you enjoy.
Nothing that's getting me moving.
I didn't say anything about exercise. I didn't say anything about exercise.
That's an interesting question.
Is there anything in your life that you enjoy doing? and you do it because you enjoy it? Or is everything about your entire life, and not to be negative, but is everything about your entire life strictly obligation and you're resentful from the moment you wake up to the moment you lie down and go to bed?
I'm gonna have to think about that. I can't
You
say
have
that's
to
an
think about that?
Well, yeah. I would have to say probably no.
Okay, good.
But
you may proceed.
Okay. In other words, it wasn't as heavy as I was taking. All right. So I have a basic question, which is it has been suggested to me that lifting is a good entry point for someone who
Is it a good end
doesn't-
point?
Entry point,
Entry,
yeah.
okay.
To get back into trying to get moving. And I don't know. I mean, I'm 60 plus, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Let me say one thing I want to say is if the thought of lifting weights, let's say if you were in a isolated area with your own weight room, if that seems like a good idea and the actual impediment is the thought of being in public and being with other people, then that's okay. And actually, Jillian, who writes for ketogenic.com, she just did a piece on that because I think that's something where you walk into a place and you assume that everybody there has been a fitness pro their whole lives, and it's not the case. You know, everybody started somewhere. And one of the things that Robert and I talked about when we did this piece with her is that we all started somewhere, and if you find someone in that gym that seems like they know what they're doing, chances are that they look that way because they're passionate about it, and they're going to be approachable most of the time, and they're going to want to talk your ear off. I know that's how it is with me. So I'm not sure what the reason is if you're not into it, but if it's something that you think is going to be fun, and maybe it's because you don't want to be around other people because you feel like you're not on their level, I think you should try to like approach someone and try to learn from someone, because you'll be surprised people will help.
And I just want to address your question to the presentation that Brad did. Can I call you Mr. Kearns? Is that okay? Actually, hold on one second. Spicoli is the second best presentation in cinematic history, and we'll discuss that later. But did you hear Brad's presentation?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. So
I'll see it when I get it streaming or whatever.
One of the tenets that he outlined in his presentation was when prior to him being the great champion that he became, he exercised just because he liked it. He would get up, do I want to do something today? No. All right, I'm not going to do anything today. Or he'd get up and go, I feel like swimming, and he'd swim. And it's a pretty good Brad impersonation, right? Like dead on? Yeah. Right. So I feel like running, I'm going to run. Like it's a beautiful day. I want to scream down the hill on a bike, right? So, and there were days he didn't want to do any of that stuff. And he got really, really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the pressure started to kick in, and he's like, now I got to do this because I got to keep it up, and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's when it becomes unfun, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is, why do you think that everything you've tried is not fun for you?
I don't think that. I think I have a lot of resistance to taking the time to do it.
So the fundamental premise is you think your time is better spent doing something else. And there's something in the back of your head that's telling you that's wrong, and that's probably social pressure. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't exercise or exercise isn't good for you, but if you're responding to something because you think it's social pressure or because it's social pressure, that's not the right reason to do it. You have to find your why. Like, why would you want to do that? Something as fundamentally simple as going for a walk. Everyone can do that pretty much, right? So
yes, but it's my resistance to taking the time to do it that seems to, and
that's a fundamental question that none of us can answer.
Can I speak on time?
Yes.
All right. I'm 25 years old. Hopefully have a lot of time ahead of me. But I'm looking at people that are half my age, and they're doing things their time. It's like, oh, I wish I would have started so long ago. I'm looking at people that are 80 years old, and they've just now found their passion, and they're going at it every single day. And the next 20 years, if they make it to 100 of their life, it's going to be time well spent, and they're going to enjoy every single one of those days. You have to look at time in the long game. You have to look at life in the long game. And I'm a big, advocate for long game thinking. Bodybuilding, I started when I was 17. Those first few years, I didn't look like I knew a clue what I was. I was 115 pounds. I was tiny. I'm in there like looking like an idiot, And if you play for the long game and live every day with intention, that has a compounding effect. You know, just like if you're into stocks, you know, you look and you invest, and it might not go up, you know, a penny or so, but over time, that compounding interest curve. The same is true with your results in the gym. I mean, your mentality, every single thing that you do, if you compound and then build that good habit and it builds on itself day after day after day, I mean, you're going to be sitting in a much prettier spot 10 years from now than you are today if you start today.
So I just wanted to keep this. Brad, you have a passion for a particular activity, correct? You enjoy, since you got out of the competitive triathlon, but you still have an activity that you enjoy, which is?
Speed golf.
Speed golf, right? Okay. Robert, you have an activity that you enjoy.
Yeah, lifting.
Peter, you have an activity that you enjoy?
Sure. I look for diversion, or if you like social contact, look for that. I mean, I do long runs in the mountains on the trails because you get to see it makes the workout worth it. Sometimes you have to play games with yourself to get it, but then when you see the gains, you start to realize, and that like I said, we're meant to be lazy, so you got to get to that thing to where that point where you realize, okay, right now at this moment, I don't want to get started, but I'm going to feel so much better when I'm done.
Danny, you have a thing that you're passionate about.
Yeah, lifting, obviously.
Right. Chris?
Basketball.
Right. Mine's jujitsu, right? Mm-hmm. There's not a day that goes by that I don't go, I just want to do jujitsu today. Like all day long, every day. I love it. You got to find the thing that makes you do that gets you out of bed. And this is not a stigma thing, like shame on you for not finding it yet.
Huh.
Don't flail around trying to grab something just because someone else is telling you, no, this is what you need to do. Try a bunch of stuff. Just try it and see if you like it. Try tennis. Try, squash. Try, anything. Go for a walk, whatever. If the issue, so what? Zumba, right? But if the issue is that you've built this mental wall where you don't have time for it, or your life is so cluttered that you look at your schedule and nothing can move to fit this in, you have a more fundamental question to address, and that is how to declutter your life. And there's no way you're going to be able to get us to do that, although I would like to try.
Hey, Brian, one other thing. I work with a lot of athletes, and in a lot of type A athletes, they don't want to make mistakes. They want it to be perfect. And you want to go back to being a kid again. And like one of the big things in the primal premise is play. And be a kid, allow yourself to be a kid again. Like we're saying, do things that are fun and be willing to go out there and just do a bunch of different things and make mistakes. It's okay. You got permission.
Absolutely.
I'm not type A. That's I'm the fundamentally lazy.
Me too.
One thing that I would say real quick too as a piece of advice, because when I first started going to the gym and exercising and everything, I was really insecure as well, just being like a really young, skinny kid and everything. Having a partner to go to the gym with is a big thing too, and make it a fun thing. So the gym partner that I had when I was first getting into it, we would make it a thing where we would go to the gym, we would get a really good training session, and then we'd go get dinner afterwards or something. Make it a date with one of your girlfriends or something. And I think that that's something that if time is your issue, that can be a way that you can incorporate it. I'm sure you have things where you're going out and hanging out with friends or whoever it is in your life, you're doing stuff like that. So I think it's finding somebody that can support you in your fitness goal and do it together. I think that can help a lot.
Never underestimate the power of human connection.
Yeah.
Next question,
Fair enough.
please.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for being up there. So my question is, it's about, I guess, supplements, specifically branched chain amino acids. I'm relatively new to keto, just been doing it a few months and incorporating exercise, and I've been told that with kind of longer intermittent fasting and doing that kind of exercise that my body is going to want to start to drop muscle, and so I need to take the branched chain amino acids, and I start reading about that, and I read that some of the kick me out of ketosis, and so I'm weighing the pros and cons. When should I take it? Should I take it before, after, just on days that I'm lifting? Should I also take it when I'm doing cardiovascular exercise? So I'm curious about that world.
Robert, you go first, then Chris.
I'll let Chris go first. I want to follow Chris.
All right. Yeah. So I have a couple things with that. one of the big things to remember is that a ketogenic diet is a lot different from other diets, and ketones themselves have a muscle sparing effect. So muscle loss being in a caloric deficit is not as big of a concern when you're in a state of ketosis compared to if you were on a low fat or a high carb diet or something like that. So if that's your reason for taking the branched chain amino acids, then that's probably not a concern. If you're trying to take them for like promoting muscle protein synthesis or building muscle, ketones also promote muscle protein synthesis. So I don't really think that they're necessary on a ketogenic diet. Some people will like to take them just because it's a habit thing. It's something that they feel, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's something that you just feel really comfortable with doing. If you're gonna do it, I think that it's important to do it around your workout or intra-workout. Leucine, which is one of the main branched chain amino acids, is both glucogenic and ketogenic. Some people will report that it may lower your ketone levels. Some, say that it won't, but there is some research out there showing that your workout can blunt the insulin response from leucine. So I would suggest if you are going to do it, which I don't think it's necessary, I would do it just around your workout or intra-workout.
I agree. I'm not really a big advocate for taking them in the off season. The only reason I took mine in the contest prep is because I was at such a deficit and I wanted to basically safeguard myself. So I would take, and I only took half a serving. I would never take a full scoop at a time, just on the off chance that it would be, too much of a surplus. I would do half a scoop, and consume throughout the course of the day, basically with a concentration towards my workout timing. But yeah, I basically did it to safeguard myself when I was at an extreme deficit.
And the final thing I want to say about that is eat steak. That you'll get all the BCAAs you need.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is if you got your diet right with the nutrition, the density and balance, it's amazing how little you need. And the research that you're reading out there, it's like a lot of this research on nutrition. There's like a grain of truth in it, but there's this huge hyperbole.
Right.
So I'm actually curious if you would respond, because I know it's often branched chain amino acids are generally taken for weightlifting, bodybuilding purposes. Do you find that it helps with like the long distance running or long distance cycling, 3, 4, 5 hours of cardio?
Like I said, it's a lot of hyperbole, and so I personally focus on getting the diet, like a nice ribeye steak. I mean, it's that simple. Just eating well when you feast, and if you're doing extended multi-day stuff, or if you're a vegetarian, like I've put people onto the MAP Master Amino thing. If you're vegetarian, then there's probably a greater case to be made for supplementing with branched chain amino acids. But the whole idea is the body really is really robust, and we have this huge reservoir in this until we don't. So. The body of science on athleticism under a fat adaptation keto diet is very small right now. And whereas what you see with your high carb athletes, there's probably a lot larger case for supplementing with branched chain amino acids in that paradigm.
Yeah, thank you. Next question. We have
Thanks a lot.
We have time for one more question. One more question.
Oh, good. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, make it a good one.
Okay, so my first comment before I ask my question is there was something you said that I think is a t-shirt. Eat keto, lift heavy.
Yes.
So if you could make that into a shirt, that'd be awesome.
On it.
Tank top, please. So I talked to Danny and to Robert a little bit about this in one of the breaks, but I'm really curious. My question has to do with protein and keto, because I just feel like there's such a conflict there between feeling like I need so much protein for building my muscle and keeping my muscle, whether it's, for my weightlifting or for my marathon running or whatever I'm doing. It's worked for me, but I also, when I did my first competition last spring, hated the carb feed day, hated how I felt on some of that stuff. And so I want to be able to launch in and try full keto, getting ready for a comp, but I just can't get around the idea about lowering the protein. So how do you, I guess, just comment on that?
Let me just say one thing. So the first thing is, I don't want anybody to ever think that I'm a high protein guy or a low protein guy. And I think I'll just continue to prove that by blowing people's minds, by cutting it in half and then doubling it. So you're not obligated to lower your protein if it works for you right now on a ketogenic diet. If you hear someone like me or like Robert talk about like lower protein, it's usually because, well, first of all, there's not that many of us that are saying that, and so we're surrounded by people who have on paper written that you need to have this amount of protein or you're going to lose muscle. And so I have a problem with that. But personally, I've done very well with lower protein, lower than the threshold that Finney and Volek recommend. And now I'm currently doing basically all meat. So it's basically double that. So I think what's important, my opinion, and like you'll always hear me say, is try it for a month or two, see how it works for you, and monitor your workouts and how you feel. If ketones are important and your ketones go down and it makes you not feel warm and fuzzy, then maybe lower the protein. But other than that, you know, if you have high protein and it's worked for you and you've kept that with keto, there's nothing wrong with that. That's my opinion.
Real quick, so it sounded like you haven't done keto yet, though, right?
No, I have.
You have.
It's when I was doing my comp prep, they had the protein so high,
Got it.
and I wasn't doing keto strips at the time.
Okay.
And I just assumed, because I was consuming 200 grams of protein a day at 130 pounds. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I weigh 130, but I'm telling you, I bod potted 6 weeks before, and I was 131 at the start, 131 at the finish, but I gained 7 pounds of muscle and dropped 5% of body fat.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of protein. There's no way I was in ketosis.
Well,
With
yeah,
that much protein, right?
Yeah, I think the big thing is what Danny was saying, though. It's an N of one. So a lot of these
I know.
questions, especially
It's true.
around resistance training, none of it matters unless you've tried it in yourself to see.
Mhm.
And like he said, if that works for you, that's awesome. Like for me personally, one of the things that I've done a lot, and I do this with some people that I help coach through, is once we get them keto adapt and we get them into a state of ketosis, we'll start messing with which is kind of actually the opposite of them, where we might start tapering fat back and increasing protein just for the sake of trying to prevent them from going so deep into a caloric deficit. And the thought is lowering fat so then they depend a little bit more on their body fat stores.
Yeah.
So you really have to try a lot of these different things and see. But when you're in a state of ketosis, you don't have to worry about protein breakdown as much because you're not gonna break down those muscle proteins as much. But I think it's just really important for you to try it. The whole high protein thing is a really interesting question on keto because that hasn't necessarily been supported in the research. I know like gluconeogenesis is what the thought is, like if you have too much, you're gonna get kicked out. That hasn't been supported in the literature yet. There's actually some stuff showing that while maybe you have an upregulation of this gluconeogenesis short term, over the course of the day, that balances out. But that's probably different for everybody. So I think that self-experimentation is huge with testing your ketone levels and tracking. But even with that, real quick with that too, even with testing your ketone levels, that's not a great telltale sign of what's going on either, because we don't really know what those ketone levels mean either. A lot of people, there's a lot of talks of once you get keto adapted, maybe your ketone levels are going to be lower because you're taking in the ketones and utilizing them better. Yeah, both of us, same thing that happens to us. So listen to yourself. So try these different things with you and listen to your body. If you still feel like your energy's great, you have good cognitive performance, you're experiencing satiety on the diet, then you're probably in a state of ketosis and you can adjust your diet accordingly.
Yeah, and as it relates to competition prep, like you were saying, I mean, you want to remove as many variables as possible, and your carbs are obviously already low, so you're getting most of your energy from fat sources, and if you're in a competition prep, you're not going to have a whole lot of stored body fat to use for fuel, so you can pretty much either taper the fat or the protein, and like I said earlier, your focus transitions from building muscle to maintaining muscle, and since ketones are so muscle sparing, you're better off, in my opinion, with what I've experienced, is to just manipulate protein down and not so much worry about losing any muscle. Because, I mean, like I said, I didn't lose any strength until right there at the very end. And if you notice, just be cognizant of how you're feeling and performing in the gym. If your lifts aren't going down and you're getting leaner and you're tapering protein, you feel great, and you're on a ketogenic macros, then who cares what the blood tests say? If you look and feel and perform great and you're making progress, then keep doing with that,
Is part of this sort of a mindset that you need all that protein?
Yeah, it was a nutritionist that I was working with at the time.
Just to offer a couple of little things is like they were saying with a ketogenic diet, there's a huge protein sparing component, but also if you're doing it properly and you're intermittent fasting, you're not snacking all the time, that high fat with protein, protein is best assimilated in a high fat environment. And what I've seen is pretty amazing, and their numbers of putting on lean body mass. It's just in this environment, which is completely different than what the body of science is built on, which is a Debach paradigm of carbs. you just don't, your body can hyper absorb and assimilate that protein. So it's just kind of being able to step away from what you've learned to believe over time.
All right, thank you, everyone. A round of applause for our wonderful, wonderful panel.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to come and talk,